Seahawks Today by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here. We're going to answer your questions coming up in a moment. But first, let's talk about the injury front for your Seattle Seahawks. This week, with camp beginning for Seattle, they placed 6 players on the active PUP list this week. Now, putting guys on the PUP list right now does not rule them out for the start of the season, but it does mean that things aren't looking great, at least for their status of getting back on the football field sooner than later. It means these guys are still a while away from being ready to go necessarily. Let's tell you who those players are the Seahawks put on the PUP list. They include Jamal Adams, Jordyn Brooks, Noah Fant, as well as Austin Faoliu at the nose tackle spot, who the Seahawks picked up from the XFL from the Seattle Sea Dragons. Bryan Mone, Tariq Woolen were those other 2 names as well. So 6 players in total at this point. So let's go ahead and go through the takeaways of all these one by one. No surprise on Jamal Adams at this point. We were not expecting him to be ready to go at the very beginning of camp. The goal for Jamal Adams has always been week 1, and I don't think that's changed at this point for him to be ready to go at the beginning of the season. So not a huge surprise, not the end of the world that Jamal Adams isn't available quite yet. Meanwhile, I would not expect Jordyn Brooks to be quite ready to go at this point. That was not a surprise when it was listed that he was on the injury report going on the PUP list right now. What that does, though, is it puts a ton of pressure on Devin Bush at this point, because the idea when Devin Bush signed with the Seahawks, it was, hey, you're probably going to be a backup, a rotational piece, depending on how quickly Jordyn Brooks recovers from injury. And now where things are at, that says, all right, Devin Bush, you're going to get significant playing time. And you got to play a hell of a lot better than you did your end of time at Pittsburgh here. Pressure's on Devin Bush to get this thing going. Not just Jordyn Brooks getting healthy and in a contract year and all that, but for Devin Bush to fill in and play at a high level. Now, as far as Tariq Woolen and Noah Fant goes, both those guys should be back soon. Not too worried about their statuses going forward. They'll be in good shape. I know they were wanting to have Tariq back by the time camp started. That seemed a little overly optimistic at the time when they said that, but both guys at least should be ready to go when it actually matters. So not the end of the world with those 2. Now, with the injuries to Austin as well as Bryan Mone, if it wasn't obvious already, there is a major lack of depth when it comes to the nose tackle position. And you can see why the Seahawks have considered their options of making a move for a nose tackle, whether it be free agency or trade. We've heard from Pete Carroll say that they're looking around, they're keeping their eyes open. And besides just the lack thereof talent-wise of having an elite playmaker there, just enough bodies involved, the Seahawks have a big issue on their hands, and the season hasn't begun yet. And so Cam Young, who the Seahawks drafted from Mississippi State, a lot of pressure on him right away to step into that role. He might start week 1 if things continue to look the way they do at this point in time. So with all of that said, what is your level of concern with the injury front of where the Seahawks are at in training camp right now? Weigh in. Tell me what you think in the comment section. Scale it for me 1 through 10, what your level of concern is with the Seahawks with their injuries, where things are at right now. Gino better than Russ with a throwback uniform. You'll love to see it. Writes in, hashtag Seahawks, what player needs to have a really good camp for the Seahawks? It's the guy we talked about in the injury segment. Devin Bush really needs to play well in this camp, and I think that he needs to even take another step up beyond that. It's not just playing well in camp, but it's also playing well in the snaps, in the games that actually matter here. Because the bottom line is this: if Jordyn Brooks isn't going to be available anytime soon, then with Devin Bush, you are not going to just sit there and be content if he's not going to play at a high level. The Seahawks could then look at a number of guys to potentially bring in for a trade. And one guy in particular Devon White, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, is being looked at as a possibility for teams around the league kind of being shopped of some sort. So with that said, I think he's the one that needs to have a really good camp. I'm also looking for Drew Lock in particular. He needs to have a good camp as well. Did not have a very good camp last year, in particular what he did in the preseason. Granted, he did get COVID and all that. But those guys, for me, are ones that stand out that need to step up to prove why that they belong here and deserve playing time. And in Drew Lock's case, he needs to prove why that not just that he belongs here, but why he should be trusted in case something were to happen to Geno Smith to fill in that role. So, who's a player the Seahawks need to step up at training camp? Weigh in the comments section. Give me a player that comes to mind, whether it's somebody we talked about or somebody we didn't talk about. Tell me in the comments section who you think needs to step up at training camp for the Seattle Seahawks. One of the exciting things about the Seahawks in 2023 is the throwback gear that they're going to be wearing this season. And it is going to be phenomenal. You know it looks good. Goes back to the AFC days. And what we're doing here at Seahawks Day by Chat Sports is we're selling throwback gear. That way, when throwback week comes around, you're prepared. You're wearing that same stuff. Maybe the throwback gear you have from yesteryear, it got a little dirty or ripped up, whatever, from all those years. Luckily, we have the Seahawks throwback gear and on sale as well for a limited time. 60% off while supplies last. Chatsports.com/Seahawks gear to get yours today. That's chatsports.com/Seahawks gear to get yours now while supplies last. Chatsports.com/Seahawks gear. Get to the super chats coming in from Doom. Writes in, do the Seahawks give Jamal Adams a Troy Polamalu type role where he can just kind of do whatever he wants while Diggs and Love drop back into coverage? Sounds like a good idea in theory, Doom. But let's get him on the football field first. Let's make sure he's healthy and ready to go week one. But here's my concern about that. I like where you're thinking. It's a good idea in theory. But if Jamal has no direction, this would be my counter argument. If Jamal has no direction, it's kind of free-flowing of some sort, and already has the injury issues he's dealt with, isn't that going to kind of make him prone to more injuries by just kind of hanging around and doing whatever he wants, potentially? I would want more structure, maybe, around Jamal Adams. I like the idea in theory, but then when I step back and say, is that going to lead to Jamal being hurt more? I don't know, potentially. So, sounds like a good idea, but it could come with consequences as far as that goes, Doom. Let's see him get on the football field first. Alexander with a $5 super chat. I know you guys have talked about Grover Stewart being an option. What about Vita Vea? No need for the DK song. I love the DK song. Man, that hurt. You don't want the DK song? Okay, anyways, as far as Vita Vea goes, this is a guy that, Washington Husky fans are very familiar with. Former Husky, 2018 first-round pick, won a Super Bowl with the Bucs, went to a Pro Bowl, one of the better nose tackles in the league. Bucs are in an odd situation right now. Dave Canales is their OC, who was the quarterback's coach in Seattle previously. But they're kind of in a weird state of mind because the Bucs can't really rebuild because the salary cap hell they're in, and with where they were at draft pick-wise and all that this past year, wasn't too kind to them, essentially. But yet they still have star talent like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and others like that. So I don't know if they're looking to move on from him necessarily, but if they are, that would be an incredible fit, and it would be exactly what the Seahawks are looking for. So, Alexander, I think you might be onto something there. And then Alexander with a follow-up super chat says, suggested lineup, nickel with Prez as a floater, Reek and Spoon on the outside, Colby at the slot, Diggs and Love on the backfield. Just a thought. Sing it, fellas. Oh, we'll sing it here in just a second. That's a great idea. I think you might be onto something. That floater roll, the three high safety technique, I think what you're talking about, you will see the Seahawks do at some point this year. So you might be onto something there. Let's see him get healthy first. But Alexander, you know ball. You know ball, my guy. And with that, we will sing the song for you. Chomping, chomping, carols, chomping, Geno passes, no one stopping, DK. Touchdowns all day. He rules. Thank you, Alexander. Hawk and Flock writes in, what are your expectations for Geno Smith during camp? So let's put it this way, okay? If Geno Smith plays exactly like he did last year, if that's his encore presentation in 2023, you'll take that. 30-plus touchdowns, 11 interceptions, most accurate quarterback in the league percentage-wise. Yeah, that'd be fine. But I think Geno is going to be even better, that he's going to take a step forward in 2023. And the big thing for me to watch for specifically is cutting back on the turnovers to an extent. To me, that's the number one thing we're pointing to with Geno Smith is the turnover numbers have got to come down as a whole. Because the second half of the year, his turnovers went way up. Got to do a better job of taking care of the football. And so for Geno, I think it's putting in the work. And we've heard the rumblings that he's working as hard as he's ever looked before. He said he feels like he's 21 years old again. Continue to do those extra things, to go the extra mile. If he does that, he'll be in good shape. He's got a great arsenal around him when it comes to his backfield, his receivers, his offensive line is going to be better. Let's see Geno take another step forward. That's my expectation. So here at Seahawks Today, we believe Geno Smith will improve this season from last. If you agree with that statement, type T for true. If you disagree with that statement, type F for false. Let us know in the comment section what you think one way or the other. T for true, F for false, and let me know.